Our last and possibly our best. We definitely have our largest panel of experts right now. We've got Livable. We're talking about where can I live and age in place. Rethink your housing choices with new up-to-date solutions. Learn about recent advancements for independent living demanded by the exploding baby boomer demographic. Our speaker of panelists range from architects to builders to emerging specialists. They are passionate about the many new features now available for living and aging in place and the wellness movement. Have you considered backyard homes, renovating your existing homes, perhaps build a new addition for the whole family, or join forces in a co-op living or co-ownership? All are committed to ensure the living space will not look like an institution. Ladies and gentlemen, our moderator, the one and only Pip Hope.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you very much for coming for today's April National Toronto Home Show. And this is Monday around 6 o'clock at night. Thank you so much for staying later. We're going to be on again on Wednesday at 6 o'clock if you ever want to come back. So this session is a bunch of speaker panelists that have never met each other before, except for today, which is kind of fun. And we're going to talk about where I can live and age in place. Rethink our housing choices for the next chapter in our life. Now, probably you or a family member are here because you have physical challenges. It might be hard to get upstairs, and that bathroom and maybe the bedroom is on the second level. You're not ready for assisted living. You're not ready or don't want to go to a 55-plus community. You don't want to go into a condo, and you don't want to go into a life or land lease home. But you know you do want to stay in your own home, or at least have the option if you wanted to stay in your own home. But how can you do that if you can't get up the stairs? Well, we're going to tell you today there are definitely options. We're going to make the home adapt to you, not you adapt to the home. So how many people are trying to now reach the upper kitchen cabinets? Can you? I'm tall, and I can't, and all I do is curse. Who decided to put kitchen upper cabinets that high? I still can't reach them. Who is that person? Why do we keep doing it? Well, we really don't. There are solutions. Come back to the booth at My Livable Home, and we'll show you. Okay, yeah. Next thing. Wait, I got a prop. Okay. Whoa. How many people know what this is?
I still have one.
Still have it? Okay. So those of you who are not laughing, this is a tool we used to use to make telephone calls. So those of you that are laughing means you were born between 1946 and 1964. That makes you a baby boomer. You know what this is. Now, as a baby boomer, and I feel this too because I'm a baby boomer, actually, this is my telephone. This is my phone number. And if you want to know how old I am, there's no area code. So I'm not too sure how to date that. So being a baby boomer, I've started to feel some changes in my body. Mainly the heels are wear. No, not that. My mobility and my balance is starting to question my next move, such as getting in and out of the tub. I kind of know I need a grab bar, but damn, those things are ugly. I'm not putting one of those in, because then I'll be stigmatized that I've aged, I'm old. But I tell you, the one time you really want a grab bar is the time that's going to save your life, or it's going to stop you from having a fall. And we all know slip and falls are sort of the worst kind of house hazard you could have, not just for seniors, but also for children. And if you have a fall, that is considered a fast track to assisted living. So we're going to do everything we can to prevent falls in the home. And going back to the grab bars, I don't like calling them grab bars. I like to call them balance bars, because remember when we were in ballet? I did 2 years, so I know. That is a balance bar. And that's what we need in a washroom, is a balance bar, not a grab bar. And there's so many gorgeous types of bars out there now. It does not have to look like anything was stigmatized that you see in a hospital. There's different colors, different shapes. Some are even dual features, such as a toilet paper roll or hold a bathroom towel or the soap dish. So don't be afraid to put in a balance bar. So what do? We know that you do not want to go into assisted living. We know that you probably want to stay in your own home, in your own community, be able to walk your dog in the same kind of park you always did and you never picked up anyway. So what do? Well, you want to stay in your home, you have 3 thoughts. The first one is you want to remain independent. You want to cook and clean yourself. You don't want anybody coming in to help you. The next is that you don't want your house to look like a hospital. There's no reason to bring your bed down from the 2nd floor and put it right smack in your living room. That's how you get stigmatized. And also, you don't want the outside of your house to look like an institution, which may be one of those ugly ramps that are out, or just the whole idea that people walk by their house and they sort of say, oh, I know who lives there. Because if that happens, that's just called poor design. And all of us as living in place specialists are not going to allow that to happen. Because if we do, that meant we did a bad design, and that's bad for business. So going back to living in place, which is today's topic, this means your home should adapt to you. You do not adapt to your home. I'll repeat that a couple of times because this is the whole importance about living or staying in place. Your home environment should adapt to you and your changing needs and whoever lives with you, visitors, or who you sell the house to. A home should always adapt to you, not the other way around. You're going to hear the name living in place much more frequently now because baby boomers, me, is about 25% of the Canadian population. So we do have some clout. You're going to hear about us in the news and on the web, magazines, and there's going to be different names. Living in place is one, the one I like. There's also called aging in place. I do not like, because anytime I hear the word age, I just clue out. There's also universal design, inclusive design, accessible design, adaptive, barrier-free, or a forever home or a lifespan home. But they all basically mean the same thing. Your home should adapt to you. You do not adapt to your home. And I just want to make note that today, just because we don't have time, I'm not going to discuss any of the acute needs or emergency needs, and we're not going to discuss progressive disease or cognitive impairment. That's really a collaboration we would have with an occupational therapist. So, please come back to My Livable Home booth if you want to talk to someone about the needs that you might have to bring in an occupational therapist. There's somebody there who will certainly help you. So, that's coming near the end. I want to just tell everyone this is the first time we've assembled this group. Each person has a very unique solution to how you can live in place. And I'm hoping they're going to change the way you think for your next move, or at least let you know you have options. You can stay at home, or at least start thinking you can stay at home. So each panelist is going to speak about 5 to 7 minutes. We'll have questions at the end. And please come back to the booth after if you want to speak to them, and that's My Livable Home. It's under the number 8 big green banner. So first up, we have Andy Tran, and I'm going to read a little bit about Andy. Andy is a designer, a builder, and a building inspector from Scarborough. He owns a business known as Suite Additions. Suite as S-U-I-T-E, but I think they're sweet too.
Thank you.
He is very keen on anything to do with adding onto your home. He can advise and supply drawings and building permits for most areas in Ontario. He will discuss your residential options from a very high level to think about whether to renovate your home or add a separate basement apartment or perhaps an addition. And for those lucky ones, a backyard home. I'm especially excited for Andy to educate us on what the rest of the world is doing to offer living in place options. He just returned from some conventions in Oklahoma and Texas. So Andy, you're on.
Awesome. Does this work here? Thank you, Pam. Oh, does this work?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm sorry I didn't bring an antique to show everyone. You have the phone. But what
Excuse me.
what I will what I will share is that I showed my son there was a book with a television from the 1980s, and he was asking me why are they staring into the microwave oven. So sorry, bad joke. Okay, thank you for that introduction, Pam. And I just want to let everyone know that it's a very exciting time for rethinking how we live in terms of the houses in our cities. Obviously, there's a housing crisis. A lot of people cannot afford homes. There's a perfect storm of circumstances that's really creating a great opportunity for living in place or for aging in place. And one of the things that we're seeing is, of course, with the real estate market, with the economy and housing being unaffordable for a vast majority of people, there's also policies at the government level to encourage higher density in our existing low-rise residential infrastructure. And so what I've been busy with in the last few years is really helping folks, a lot of homeowners, a lot of small investors, is to think of creative ways for them to turn their single-family homes into multiple units, such that they are able to have their own space, have their privacy, and have a legal separation that is accepted by the municipality, and it doesn't feel, like a home that is, like some sort of an institution. So really my goal is to just inspire you folks to look at that, if you have an existing house or if you're looking to purchase a property, think about how you can utilize a space better. Because when it comes to living in place or aging in place, when you can create that space that is suitable for, not just the person living in place, but for anyone, you have that flexibility. And that flexibility is great for a family member, whether they are someone that's aging in place, or it could be ideal for, like a grown child who is, still living at home, but maybe wants some more privacy. It can be used as a rental unit to help the financial situation. So really our focus is to create spaces that are very flexible over time for different scenarios and not just necessarily designed for one aspect. Now, if we incorporate the universal design concepts, anyone can live in there without that, stigma that it is, necessarily for, an older adult, right? It can be used for everyone. So, yeah, really, that's just kind of a high-level introduction. Was there any questions, Pam, that you had listed that you wanted me to cover?
Maybe you can start to talk about the process if you do want to add on to your home as a second story or an in-law suite, or to change the basement into a legal secondary suite. Just a high-level things that you need to think about before you actually go and hire anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are really two aspects from a sort of the rules or the code-based aspect of doing these types of conversion projects. You have to first ensure that you are within the city bylaws, right? So every city or town will have their own bylaws in place as to what you can do. What's the size of your second unit or your backyard unit that you're going to be building? What are the parking requirements? What are the size, the floor ratios? So you kind of want to be aware of that. You want to work with a designer or a contractor or architect who understands that and lets you know, what are the limitations that you have. And then, of course, the other thing is the building code itself. How do you want to design this so that you are in compliance with the building code? So those are sort of the rules, things that you need to be aware of. But you also want to be aware of it from a functional standpoint. If this is going to be a rental unit, because you want to offset potentially this really high mortgage for this property, how can you maximize the rental income based on the design? You want to make it open concept. You want to, create spaces that are desirable. For example, given what everyone has faced in the last 2 years, we realize that working from home is a very good option. So can you have an additional flex space or an office space? So those are some of the functional considerations that you want to consider when you are looking at doing some of these conversions, either on your own property or on a property that you're looking to acquire.
Maybe you could give us a little story about committee of adjustments over something that was most people would run away from, but if they had somebody on their side to state their case, that will pass.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those that aren't familiar with kind of the process of approvals from the city, is when you are doing any sort of project on your house, like a large-scale renovation, you have to, like I mentioned earlier, you have to comply with all the local bylaws as it's written in the bylaw documents for that city. Now, if you want to deviate from that, let's say, they require you to have 3 parking spaces and you're only able to provide 2 parking spaces, or you want the unit sizes to be a little bit larger, or you want to add in an additional suite where the bylaw only allows you to have 2 and you want to add 3. So if you are not able to comply with the bylaws the way it's written, you can go through a minor variance process with the city, which is to ask them for special permission to be slightly deviated from what's currently there. And if you aren't knowledgeable about the process, what happens is that during this minor variance process, neighbors that are within a certain radius of your property, they get invited to voice their opinions. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that fear change. So when they hear about you building a backyard suite, they think that all of a sudden this is going to be they're going to turn this into an undesirable neighborhood, and they don't realize that a lot of the people that are doing these, they're creating really nice projects, as we've seen in other parts of Canada and the U.S., where these are not inexpensive structures that are built. They're really well built, and they do house a certain demographic of people who, maybe they're not able to acquire an entire property, but they are still able to, maintain the property. They're still able to ensure that they blend well into the property. So these are housing strategies that are meant to be not extremely, it doesn't deviate a lot from the existing characteristics of the neighborhood. It's a very gentle form of densification. So when you do have somebody on your team that understands the rules, they can communicate that better when you are going through, for example, a committee of adjustments process. And we've seen a lot of these types of projects in other parts of Canada, in Alberta, in BC. It's very common. In the U.S., there's a lot of places that are implementing these as well because of the housing affordability crisis that we're seeing, across North America. And these new policies, they're very new in Ontario. We're going to see them proliferate a lot in the coming years. So we just want everybody to be ready for them, to be able to create these great housing options. And there is definitely money to be made in this arena as well.
I know in some county in Texas, the government actually provides you with the house plans because they want you to build. So they do all the legwork for you, which is kind of very helpful to have that.
I haven't heard of that. That's a great idea. Speed up the process as well.
Speed up the process, and they know what they're getting. They've already approved everything.
Absolutely.
You can change the front, and you can plant whatever vegetation you want,
Right.
but they know it's ready to go. So they'll fast track it.
Awesome.
Okay, so next, thank you, Andy. We're going to hear from Andy again, but right now we're going to go to Fody. And Fody has his own business called Concept to Build, and he's out of Toronto. And I have to switch glasses, sorry. Edit that one out. He's a designer and a general contractor, and he's one of the very few contractors that has taken the extra training to make homes truly accessible and without looking like a hospital. He has what's known as CAPS, and CAPS is an acronym for Certified Age and Place Specialist. It's originally out of the U.S., which I have that as well, and really that's all we could have until maybe the beginning of this year. There was nothing available in Canada for it. So he is a general contractor, or also known as a GC. He's really the go-to person. to make sure all the trades follow the intent for what is making a home accessible. And you really need somebody like that on your side. He will explain how it's easy for trades such as electrician or plumber or a carpenter sometimes will overlook requirements if they really don't know what they don't know. We encourage you to contact those that do know and have paid the extra training so necessary and not just something from the internet. Well, maybe you can't build an addition or a backyard home, but you still want to live in your community. But we know our bungalow home no longer suits our needs. We can't go downstairs anymore. And we certainly know we don't want to move to a residential home and lose independency. Our children or our grandchildren still want to come. They don't want to go to a hotel. And we want to keep that great big dog that peeves off the next door neighbor when it barks. But most of all, we don't want our home to look like an institution. So Fody is going to help us understand renovating your existing home may still be an option. So we're going to go into a question and answer mode right now, mix it up a bit. So first of all, Fody, can you explain for everyone what really is a general contractor? We hear that term a lot, but I'm not sure if everybody really knows what it is.
So, contrary to popular belief, a general contractor is not somebody who drives a pickup truck and do renovations. A general contractor is somebody who has some training, some experience, and knows how to bring together a project. And the job of a general contractor is similar to a conductor. If you understand how music is written, if you understand how music is played, you make sure that the resulting sound that comes out of a group sounds the way it was intended, rather than just a mishmash of different instruments and sounds. So as a general contractor, with the architectural training that I've had, I can make sure that all the trades and all the people involved in a project are singing that right harmony to make sure the project turns out the way it's supposed to and doesn't get derailed due to people that have misconceptions or are stuck to the old ways and they don't really know anything new.
So, Fody, what is your focus when you do a living-in-place renovation?
Okay, so living in place basically means having a home that is accessible to everyone and anyone can use it, from the children to the adults to the grandparents. And essentially, that means that we need a place where we can approach it without any trip hazards, as we were talking to avoiding the falls at home. So we don't want steps going into the home. We want a home that has a wider entrance so that we can get into the home easier. And if we have to navigate it with a cane or a walker or, God forbid, a wheelchair, we can still get in and out of the home easily. And who wouldn't like a large door anyway, because you come in with groceries or grabbing a kid by the arm and you don't want to be trailing them behind you. The other thing we also look at is making sure we have at least one bathroom that is roll-in, essentially no curbs. Everybody's seen every bathroom in North America that's built with a step that you have to get over. You can trip over this, you can fall. Today, we build washrooms without curbs, and we basically build a room that has a wet property throughout, and you can just go in and out of your bathroom. And we've seen them in Europe. They're just what we think of as modern, but really they're just good design. And that's what we're striving for with a livable environment, so that we can have it for everybody and anybody that needs to use it, whether you need it for a caregiver or somebody that's going to be with you to help you in that shower, or if you're just going to go in there with your walker or support system. And then the other thing we want is bathrooms and kitchens that have different working surfaces, because as we get older, we're going to need to sit down more. We may be in that wheelchair, we may be in that walker, and if you can't get under the sink, you won't be able to use the sink. If you won't be able to use the sink in the bathroom or the kitchen, you're going to avoid doing the things that you normally did. And we want people to have that same lifestyle and the ability to do everything in their home without having to change because of their abilities.
Thank you, Fody. Another part of our CAPS training, which is Certified Age in Place Professional, is to know when to bring in other trades or other professionals. And maybe Fody can talk a little bit about, he might see something that another general contractor would not clue in at all and think, oh, this needs to be addressed now.
So as a certified aging in place specialist, I have the training to identify what modifications need to be done or should be done over a period of time as you age and use the spaces. So first, I can do an inspection, an accessibility inspection, just similar to the home inspection, but from a perspective of accessibility. And I can give you all the things that need to be done, maybe from a handyman's perspective, maybe from a small renovator's perspective, or even a builder if you need to put an addition. The other part of it is, because of my training, I can look for the things that need to be done properly. Why just renovate when you can modify for the future? Prepare your home to live in it for as long as you want and are able to, and are not forced out of your home because of circumstances. And the other part is, as we talked about trades that are not properly instructed or monitored, they will create obstacles. It's unfortunate, but my industry has a lot of people that are stuck to their ways, and when you tell them to do something different, the first thing they'll tell you is it can't be done. And if you don't have the right knowledge, you're going to accept that for fact and move on. I come with it from a different perspective. There is nothing that cannot be done. We need to find the solution that can be done, and we need to explore our different possibilities and come up with the best viable solution for the client so they can get what they need and then what they want.
So that also involved bringing in some occupational therapists.
So then, as a conductor, we bring in a team together. So if we need to get permits, we need people that can get the drawings, that can go to the city, apply for the permits. And as the general contractor, I'm responsible to make sure that the proper inspections are done throughout the process and that the job is done correctly so that we don't have any hiccups with the inspectors. And also we can close out the permits at the end of a project so that the home can be properly certified to live in. And also, when we have situations of people dealing with ability changes, we need to understand from an occupational therapist perspective what those changes are going to be over the period of their life. So I'm not an expert at that. I'm an expert at putting together the package. I need somebody that's going to be part of my team that's going to help me identify those needs, and then we can explore the solutions together.
So a certified aging-in-place professional knows how to collaborate with an occupational therapist. So together they will make a solution for that particular person, and always considering they want to maintain the equity in the home and not overspend, and also not stigmatize of who's living in there for the next person coming around.
Absolutely. I hate anything that looks like a hospital because people took a shortcut and just bought something off the shelf and put no thought into it. You walk into these beautiful restaurants or beautiful homes that have picked their fixtures out, they picked their finishes, and then they just grabbed a grab bar and stuck it on the wall just because somebody needs it for accessibility. There are beautiful things that can be done. There are different options out there, and when you look at it, you will have no idea that this is designed for somebody that has accessibility needs. And if it's done right, it adds value to the home. If it's not done right, you're going to have to rip it out before you sell it. So not only have you wasted your money putting it in, but you also have to now spend money to fix it before you sell it.
Maybe, Fody, on closing, you could just maybe tell us a little bit of story about the idea of blocking walls in a washroom and the sizes that were given.
So when we're designing the project, we can build in things for the future that we won't have to act on now. And one of the simple things we do is build in the blocking for those balance bars, as you put them, Pam, so that we don't have to worry about where they're going to go and how we're going to attach them. So if the future brings the need for that accessible fixture and the wall has been reinforced accordingly, all you're going to have to do is drill the holes and attach it. A simple step of putting that in the beginning of the project would have saved you tons of money and would have made it so easy to make the changes later in the future. And then there's things like when you put in a door or replace a door, why would you keep your 24-inch bathroom door? We were talking about that, Pam. Why do we have 24-inch doors? Put in the bigger door. Make it so that somebody can get through it with their wheelchair, with their walker. It's going to be so much easier for everybody in the family to have that. And that's all we need to do is think about these things. And if you don't think about them, all you're going to do is get the same old over and over again.
It's funny you mentioned the 24-inch bathroom door. I was talking to a colleague and we were saying, where do you think that came from? Because the Washroom door is 24-inch, but the bedroom right beside it is 30 or 32. You go to the bedroom maybe twice a day. The washroom, you go more than 5 times a day sometimes, right? Why 24 inches? His answer was the outhouse door was 24 inches, and they just carried it on. Makes sense to me. Okay, so next up, we're going to go back to Andy. Andy is actually covering for our architect who just came down with COVID last night. And thank goodness Andy can step in because he's so well-rounded in all his knowledge, and he's going to talk to us about garden suites.
All right. So, yeah, garden suites, very exciting. I touched on that a little bit earlier, but garden suites is what they are called in Toronto. And effectively, they are detached structures that you can build in your backyards. Now, as it currently stands, there's a little bit of a delay, a little bit of a hiccup with the City of Toronto because there was an appeal by a bunch of residents associations for these because, again, as I mentioned, there are a lot of people that fear change. But it is coming. It is provincial law that with Bill 108, the More Homes, More Choice Act, every city and town in Ontario will be required to have policies in place to allow, the official term is additional residential units. Again, as I mentioned in Toronto, they're called garden suites. They are very commonly referred to across the U.S. as ADUs, which stands for accessory dwelling units, right? And so these are going to be separate structures in our backyards because in North America, a vast majority of our lots are long rectangles where the property is near the front of the lot and you have a big backyard. And a lot of people realize that this big backyard can be utilized for additional structures. The key thing is that you are building this structure. It is part of the existing house, so you can't sever them. But it is part of this house, and it's great for family members. It's great for living in place. It's great as a potential rental unit. And this is something that we are actually working on right now for several clients of ours in a few municipalities outside of Toronto. So we have a few projects in Hamilton. We have some projects in Brantford and Welland. And we're very excited, in the next year or so to be working on these projects in Toronto. And this is something that I encourage everyone to look into. Again, whether it's for your existing property or for whether it's for a property that you're looking to acquire, is to understand what the rules are and try to have a property where you can have this, even if you're not going to be building it right away, is to have that potential because this effectively is free land that you can build on, right? If you're doing any sort of development project, the land development portion is going to take up a big chunk of your budget. Effectively, you're able to eliminate that portion because it is encouraged by the government, and it makes a lot of sense given where the real estate market is. And your resources are only going to be focused on the labor and the material cost to build this, not all of the development red tape that's typically associated with any sort of land development. So it's something that is very exciting, and these are great options for family members living together, or as an additional financial resource to just cover the high cost of housing.
Well, we've all seen HGTV.
Yes.
And I hope you can sort of tell us a little bit about modular housing or the shipping container or tiny homes. And how does that work with garden suites or in Toronto?
Sure, yeah. The whole prefab housing option is very exciting. Now, prefab or manufactured housing is nothing new. They've been around for decades, although they haven't really gained a lot of traction as a very conventional building method. And one of many reasons I think is that the costs haven't been able to come down over the decades, and a lot of that has to do with high cost of manufacturing facilities. You don't have enough of a demand where you can have many manufacturers in different locations. So a lot of times these prefab homes have to be built in a certain location, has to be trucked, and there needs to be local expertise. And I think that in the next few years, that's really going to change for several reasons because because of the demand that's going to be there. Again, given where our real estate market is, land is going to be very valuable to be able to build these. From the policy side, they are encouraging these, so we're going to see a demand there. And then also from a technology side, right? Automation, robotics, and being able to build these in facilities in a almost like a like a factory, kind of a just-in-time system, where these are going to be, they're going to come down a lot in costs, and along with the demand, I think prefab is going to be something that we're going to be seeing a lot in the coming years.
So if you have a property in Toronto and it has enough depth, hang on to it and build a garden suite.
100%. Hang on to it.
We're going to come back a little bit later and banter about some of the living in place features that you could put in a garden suite. But next we're going to move on to Leslie Gaynor. And Leslie, she was actually a social worker for 20 years. And what I found very interesting, the founder of Mitzi's Restaurants.
Yeah.
Okay. Currently, she's a realtor and the founder of GoCo Solutions. More about that later. Are you concerned your children have been priced out of buying a house? I'm sure everybody here has. Are you thinking about moving closer to your adult children or vice versa to help them with their grandkids? Or keep your own independence? And here's the big concern, not be a burden. There are many options to make this affordable and all under one roof. Add universally designed living in place features and everyone can live happily ever after. Co-ownership is not just for multi-generational families, it's also for co-living. Leslie and her team have made an entire new business just to make this happen. Get it at GoCo Solutions, aka Go Co-ownership. Yes, there are ways you can afford to buy a house in Toronto. She will discuss by using her unique and clever housing solution through co-ownership. Thank you, Leslie.
Oh, thank you very much. So let me just start by saying I feel like I'm a little bit of an odd duck on this panel, although I do believe that living in place and being able to stay in a home is really important. But what I've actually tried to look at is how to make housing a little more accessible from an affordability perspective. So it's a little different than what everyone else is doing. But I just want to point out that there's just been a recent study that was done for Key Living, which is a technical-based real estate agency that's just about to come out. And the study shows that 9 out of 10 Canadians feel locked out of the market. So these are aspiring homeowners that feel like they aren't going to be able to purchase a home. And remember, I don't know about anyone else, but how important home ownership or home security is for people, whether that be people who are young or more senior. I think we also have to recognize that we have seen 50% increase in housing costs, and we've seen a 5.4% increase in wages. So we know that there's a problem. I don't think anyone here would disagree that there's a real issue when it comes to affordability. So what GoCo has done is we've actually taken time to help people understand how to buy properties together. And that could be to help solve a number of issues, whether it be the issue of we've got aging parents, and we don't want them to go into a home, we've got a home that we no longer can afford on our own, or a group of young millennials who want to try and get into the market. And then we do social contracting with them, which means that we'll sit down and say, okay, you've got the house, now what else can we do to bring into the environment to make sure that there are other benefits? So some of them decide to share childcare. So, if you've got 3 families living together, they can get rid of that after-school cost of about $500 a month. Or go down to 1 car, or share dog care. Like, there's all kinds of ways. But the most important piece that we do at GoCo is we sit down with people and we say, what's the problem you're trying to solve? And that's my social work background. And then we take that and we start to look at how bricks and mortar and properly designed bricks and mortar can actually solve that problem. And then we help them from beginning to end look at what does it mean to get into a co-ownership agreement. because it's way easier to get in than it is to get out of a co-ownership agreement. And in part, that's because of the way that our finance models are. Under the Canadian Mortgage Act, it is one title, one mortgage. Unlike in a condominium where the owners of those units hold title to that property, therefore they can mortgage it individually, we haven't gotten there yet with more gentle density and the development of a co-ownership model in our homes. So we're working really hard at getting to get banks to understand, financial institutions and lending institutions to understand that there is value in what I'll call fractional ownership, but it isn't quite what, the holiday properties people buy, the timeshare. That's not what I'm trying to design. It is more about there being a recognition for mortgages on properties that are co-owned. So one mortgage, one title means that if someone wants to exit that co-ownership, the entire mortgage needs to be redone. So that's why we spend a lot of time doing the qualifying, so to speak, for people who want to look at co-ownership as a model of purchasing property anywhere. But right now I work in the GTA. I think it's also really important to know that I don't think supply is the only way to solve our housing problem, whether that be accessibility or affordability. I think supply is one approach. We also have to look at how we think about home ownership as a way to support us, whether we're aging in place or just living our lives. So the shared economy, the notion of being able to get away from this individualism that I have to have my own home, I'm going to live by myself, I think we need to start to challenge that. And we do that from beginning to end. I also just want to make sure that it's really clear that one of the things that GoCo Solutions does is the bricks and mortar is the very last piece of our job. I am a real estate agent. Obviously, I will and do help people buy properties that are appropriate for the problem they are trying to solve. But there are so many pieces ahead of that. There's the understanding, what does it mean to co-own? How do you deal with disability, divorce? How do you deal with family law? Like, there is a plethora of things you have to consider, and we help you get through all of that so that you have a very solid legal agreement so that exiting can happen. So I don't want to confuse co-ownership with co-living, which Judy will talk about, because most of the houses that I have done over the last 7 years are people come, we look at individual units being either already designed and developed in the property, or we take a property and we get someone like Andy to come and say, you can build a garden suite. So some of the examples we just had a group of millennials buy a triplex. They brought on a fourth party, and they're building a laneway house. So there will be actually 4 units altogether. I've put a multi-generational family into what we called the family compound, and they built a party room out back. So they have very small kitchens, very small kind of units, but they have this large kitchen, living room, dining room, so that when they all want to be together and invite friends over, they have a party palace. I've also put 2 families together who have children who have severe disabilities, and they are now supporting one another in taking care of their children, because respite care is very hard to find for children with complex medical issues. So I think what we can do is start using our homes as a way to solve some of the other problems that we are faced with. And as social services become less and less available, and institutional care becomes more problematic, I think we need to rely on ourselves and building community in order to solve some of these problems.
Thank you, Leslie. I wanted to go back to that compound idea, if you could maybe share. I believe it was a corner unit, and that was no small feat to find, I'm sure, as a realtor.
No, the property itself was not initially set up to be a co-owned property. It was a large single-family dwelling, which we then turned into 3 units and had a room. It wasn't really a room. It was more of garage that they turned then into the large sort of living room communal kitchen. And it was on the market for a long time because it wasn't that pretty. And it was expensive, but between the families, it was quite affordable.
We like it when it's not pretty because we turn around and we make it pretty and we make it our way for living in place. Also, to comment about the multi-generational home, as they did add an upgrade, they were able to perhaps refinance and be able to put in an elevator, which would have been maybe at the beginning was astronomical in cost. Now they can do it. They've earned it.
I mean, the whole thing about co-ownership is the combining and leveraging of more people's resources, right? So when you go to the bank, even though the bank sees this as risk, which is part of the problem, our mortgage default rate is, I think, less than 1%. So we have the capacity to leverage 4 incomes. There's more resources to do the things that you might need to do. And that includes sharing a caregiver or a property manager. You know, you no longer want to shovel your driveway. You no longer want to have to look after the garden. Well, if there are 4 families who are also in the same position, then you can more likely afford. The other thing that we're finding is a population of people who are living in their homes that have more space than they need, or more space, but they're afraid to sell their home because where will they go? And so one of the things that we've been looking at is helping people sell half their home. Unlike a chip reverse mortgage, you get money in your pocket, you get to stay in your home, and you still accrue value. Whereas, I won't get into the chip reverse mortgage thing, but you lose the accrual of any more value once you've sold it to chip. So this way we find, and then the young family that's getting into the market can also act as a support for the person who may be living on the main floor.
I had not heard of that before, but that's great because they can stay in the community they love.
Exactly.
A lot of people just want that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leslie. Next, we're going to have Judy Shepalo, who's from Hamilton. And Judy is also a real estate agent. She specializes with seniors. Her goal is to provide housing options for older adults beyond living in their home or as a rental. She is trained to assist with a transition and to remove as much of the stress of moving as possible. Throughout this journey, Judy became progressively more interested in co-ownership and co-living, which is also called home sharing. I always get those mixed up. I probably just now, right? Okay. She founded Co-Housing Hamilton, which is a housing option for all ages. Judy will discuss co-living as opposed to Leslie discussing co-ownership. Both frequently work together and are tireless with speaking engagements to bring this idea forward. So, thank you, Judy.
Thank you, Pam. Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. And I just wanted to start by talking very briefly about resilient aging, which is using the ups and downs of the experiences we've had to adapt to age-associated changes. And resilient aging is having shaping a meaningful life, connecting with others, being a lifelong learner, that kind of thing. And the whole key to this kind of thing is the notion of connection, which is easy to find when you join a community. John Donne, an old English writer from a long time ago, said a phrase that I like, which is "no man is an island," meaning that we all need community to thrive. None of us really benefit from being alone for too long. There's an architect named Grace Kim who did an excellent TED Talk some time ago. She lives in Seattle and developed and lives in her co-housing community. And she said that co-housing can be an antidote to isolation and loneliness because people are obviously connecting with one another. There's the next thing that really comes to mind is the whys of co-housing, which some of them are the same as co-ownership. There's a need to be in a community. Co-housing provides an excellent venue for aging in place, which I know Pam doesn't like that phrase, but we also talk about getting out of denial because we are aging. So unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, we are aging, and aging in place in a community like co-housing. The benefits of that are there's a rich social network that's built right into the community. There's a lot of mutual support available. There's shared resources. You can share ideas, wisdom, conversation, barbecues, tools, cars, bicycles, activities, experiences, skills, talents, whatever. There's a multitude of things that people can share when they live in community. And also there's independence and interdependence are both fostered in a co-housing community, insofar as, I think as Leslie mentioned, that we have been up till now, still are to some extent, really focused on individualism and independence, whereas co-ownership and co-housing are more about working together as a group. There's a lot of opportunity to try out new skills for personal growth. There's emotional support, which is apparently one of the key reasons that people go into something like co-housing, because you're never alone any longer. They're built in such a manner that they're eco-friendly, environmentally friendly. There's a lot of different things that we can share and do for one another, such as pet care and dog sitting and child minding and all that kind of thing. It is something that I know I'm talking about seniors in particular, but it's also an excellent option for any age, really, because even children are aging as we speak. And apparently those children who are raised in a co-housing environment apparently absolutely love it and have tended to go on to promote and provide their own co-housing community when they get a little bit older. One of the things that I think is really interesting in co-housing is the fact that we basically co-develop, co-design, and manage it ourselves. And when I say ourselves, it's a concept that I got interested in about 2017. And the more I got into it, the more I learned about it, the more I thought, well, why not me? So I'm planning on moving into it as well with my husband, as opposed to saying it's a good idea for somebody else, but I would never do it, because I think it's an excellent option for any age. There's a couple things about it that I just wanted to mention, and those are the way that we started co-housing Hamilton, which was in 2019 in the fall. I took a course from Charles Durrett, who's the architect who brought the notion of co-housing from Denmark. He brought it to California in the 1980s. He was studying architecture in Denmark, he and his then wife, Katie McCammond. They stumbled across a co-housing community in Denmark, found out about it, and decided they wanted to learn more, so they stayed in Denmark and studied that kind of architecture in particular and brought it back to North America in the 80s. The first co-housing community was built in Davis, California in 1991, and the first one in Canada was in 1996 in Langley, BC. So it's an excellent option for a lot of different people. After I took that course, I then decided, well, why not start a community such as this in Hamilton? So we thought, well, what do we do now? Well, let's have a meeting. So we had a meeting and we went from there, and we've been going for 2 years now, and we're in the process of looking for land. What exactly it is around between 15 and 40 residential units that are completely self-contained and discrete. They've got their own kitchen, living room, dining area, bedrooms, bathroom, the whole 9 yards. But there's also a large common house that is basically an extension of the living space for the individual units. And people can congregate there. There'll be guest suites, a large commercial kitchen, dining room, maybe a yoga room, a workshop, a library, whatever we want. And people are encouraged to just interact there. There's a lot of opportunity for sort of spontaneous interaction between people who live in co-housing, because it's architecturally designed by someone who knows about co-housing. It's not just another apartment building or another complex. And the typology could be a mix of perhaps attached bungalows, or perhaps a stacked townhouse, or a low-rise condo building, or anything like that. It could be a combination of those things. So it's something that we're in the process of doing. We're hoping to be completed by 2024 if we're lucky. We're in the process of looking for land in the Hamilton area. And there's other co-housing communities in Ontario also in the forming stages as we are, but there's none that are completed as yet. There's several in BC, and there's a few across Canada and the other provinces, but nothing's been completed as yet. So I hope I've at least intrigued you a little bit about what co-housing is. It does have a lot of the same benefits as co-ownership insofar as it's an intentional community. And people that are going into it are doing it because they want to live in a community and not live by themselves any longer and have the benefit of all that. So thank you.
So what kind of format is that? Is it condominium, or how does that work?
It's probably going to end up being a condo style of ownership. It could be a co-op, but in our case, and in most cases, it tends to be a condo. It's just easier for financing. It's simple, that kind of thing.
Could you maybe touch on home sharing and the programs that McMaster in Hamilton has offered.
Yeah, home sharing is another option for co-living, insofar as typically, for example, a senior or anybody might have a largish house, 3 or 4 bedrooms, that they've got 1 or 2 bedrooms vacant, and they might advertise to other people to share the house with them. McMaster University has a program called Symbiosis, which means that the seniors that own a house, they will be matched with a grad student to share the house with them, and that could entail that the student does some of the tasks and the little errands around the house for them for reduced rent, or it could be just a straight up and sort of a rental income to augment the senior's pension. But either way, it ends up being a really lovely relationship between the two of them as they become friends.
That is the model that I've been pursuing, which is taking a bungalow, converting the ground floor for the... You can edit that, can't you? The model that I've been pursuing for a while is taking a bungalow that's maybe built in the 1960s and really make it ground floor living for whoever's living in there. And they probably have owned the house themselves for about 60 years. They've never gone down to the basement for another 10 years. And they always have to ask a neighbor or someone to go down and get the Christmas decorations. And what I would like to do is make that ground floor accessible by what Fody was talking about. Let's get rid of the stairs. There's other ways we can get you into the house. We're going to widen the door. We're going to get rid of any of the corridors, maybe take down a few walls. Augment the kitchen with some fantastic design solutions that you can see at our booth at my livable home. Make the washroom accessible and make it a curbless shower or a roll-in shower. Make it a little bit bigger. We might have to take a little bit out of the second bedroom that has a closet that nobody uses anyway. And then down in the basement, which is always the unused space for the typical couple, is to put a student in, or for Andy's sake, make it into a legal apartment, and then that augments their income, plus they have somebody there. And that person can also cut the grass or shovel the walk or get those Christmas decorations. So I think now we could probably close, or if we have time, we might banter about some of the features that you can do in your backyard unit, because you're starting from scratch. And always, if you can start from day one, accessibility would maybe only cost you 1% over a normal construction budget. And that's usually only because the doors are going to be wider. Other than that, it's going to be getting up in price. And this is why we really, really think garden suites are a great answer. So maybe we can just go around the panel here and banter, just from what you've learned today. Why do you think a garden suite's a good answer? I can start off. It's built on grade. We don't have to worry about a basement right away. We don't have to think about stairs. So it's complete for ground floor living. And you can have a front entrance now and make that into a little sanitized area for COVID, because it's coming back. It's accessible for all. There's no barriers at all when you walk up to the garden suite. As I said, it's flat on grade. There's no step, no trip. And really, only about 7 to 10% people are users of wheelchairs. You never know about the future, so we should design for that. Fully customized interior for a full 60-inch turning radius, which is what you should require for a wheelchair. Eliminate corridors, because they're just space-sucking. And design all doors to be 36 inches minimum, which is basically an exterior door, but carry that into the interior door. Okay, you got into your home, but how are you going to get around? Why would you make the door smaller? And does anybody else have anything they could add to this? For why a garden suite could be quite easily be made accessible? Okay, well, you could just say what you were going to say.
I was going to answer the wrong question. Just one of the advantages is intensification, which we've been looking for in housing as well.
Andy, do you have some more?
Yeah, sure. The one thing that we didn't really touch on was the eco side of building, and I know that Daniel, who was supposed to be here, is a specialist in that, and obviously, I won't be able to fill his shoes from that side because that is something that he does on a daily basis. Whereas, of course, I do believe that eco building and energy efficiency is very important. Although densification in and of itself is already a very environmentally strategic approach because you're looking at energy consumption per capita. So if we're able to add on top of that as a bonus, using obviously very energy efficient materials is important. Designing it with, for example, passive house principles. You may not necessarily get 100% of passive house standards, and it may not have that label that it's a passive house. But if you can, design windows that are south-facing, where you can absorb a lot of the light in the wintertime in order to get the heating, and at the same time have roof slopes that can block that light out in the summer and keep it cooler. So those kind of things that you can think a lot about, being very, very well insulated, and perhaps utilizing electric heating in a very efficient manner. So those are sort of things that we want to talk about as well when it comes to building these, and energy efficiency and eco-building is something that we always keep on top of mind. But like I said, densification in itself is a very, very strong strategy for energy efficient building, just increasing the number of people in X number of floor space.
Anyone else have anything to add to that? Cody?
What really excites me about garden suites is the multi-generational aspect of it. Having a home with an auxiliary unit behind it just offers so much opportunity for independence as well as support for the family. So if you think about it from a point of your parents, who wasn't worried about their parents going to a retirement home these days? You can have them right in your backyard. They can have the independence they want, and they can be there if they need the support. By the same token, they are there to support you. They're just a few steps away, so they can help you with your family. You can also have that for your own children. So if your children are not able to buy a home, as we've established in this conversation, they can live in that auxiliary suite for as long as they need to until they can get their own home. And then if it's just going to be an empty suite, it's a source of income. It's a place where you can have your caregiver live who's going to look after you. So the opportunities are incredible, and I'm so excited that we're finally getting garden suites, and I hope they get over that hurdle really soon.
They will, yeah.
Well, I hope we've opened up your eyes to realize you do have options. You can stay in your home, but all you need to do is really start planning and plan and keep on planning before you do any kind of renovation or any kind of home purchase. So if we all accomplish anything today, I would just like everyone to tell someone that you heard about this panel and all the little points that we made you think about, and just realize that living in place is here to stay. You have options, and just be more aware. And thank you.